What if I told you that Ferrari already has the update ready that can change the entire 2026 season, and that when Lewis Hamilton tested it at Monza, his reaction was so shocking that within the team, they talk about it before and after starting in Miami? Subscribe to continue uploading more of this type of content now, if we continue. Ferrari arrives at the 2026 Miami Grand Prix in one of the most delicate moments of its recent project, but what is really important is not only the visible result on the track, but everything that has happened behind the scenes to get to this point. Because while the focus was on the first races of the calendar, where the SF26 failed to meet the expectations generated during the winter, a response was already brewing in Maranello that could completely change the course of the season. And the start of the year has been much harder than the team expected. Not only because of the difference in points compared to its direct rivals, but also because of the constant feeling of being one step behind in practically all competitive scenarios, something that has especially hit Lewis Hamilton, who quickly realized that the challenge he faced was much greater than expected, needing to adapt not only to a new team, but to a car that did not allow him to exploit his full potential. In this context, Ferrari had no room to follow a conventional progressive development. They needed an immediate and forceful reaction, and that is where this package of updates that we will see in Miami was born. It is not a simple evolution. It is a profound reconfiguration of the car's concept, specifically designed to correct the most critical weaknesses that have conditioned the performance of the SF26 at the start of the season. During the first races, the team has suffered especially in two key areas: the efficiency of the power unit and energy management, two absolutely determining factors in the 2026 regulations. Hamilton made it clear on several occasions, directly pointing out the lack of power as one of the main problems, even hinting that the difference with Mercedes could be around worrying figures, something that not only affects the top speed, but also the ability to defend and attack in the race, limiting any possible strategy. But the most interesting thing is not just the problem, but how Ferrari decides to address it. Instead of waiting to introduce improvements in stages, they concentrated all their resources on a single package that was supposed to mark a turning point. And to validate this leap, they use a tool that, although limited by regulations, becomes key: the Monza filming day. This event, which in theory is intended for promotional purposes, is transformed into a covert test where every kilometer counts. Ferrari makes the most of the 200 kilometers allowed to collect critical data, but above all to obtain something that no simulator can fully replicate: the real feeling of the driver behind the wheel. And this is where the most determining element of this entire process comes in: Lewis Hamilton. Because beyond the data, Ferrari needed clear confirmation that the car had really changed. After weeks of frustration, statements showing a lack of performance, and races where even maintaining a competitive pace was difficult, this test in Monza represented a kind of final exam for the new package. When Hamilton gets in the car, he is not only evaluating technical improvements, he is measuring whether Ferrari has really understood the problems that he himself has pointed out since the start of the season. What happens on that day completely changes the internal narrative of the team. For the first time, Hamilton perceives real differences in key aspects of the car's behavior, especially in power delivery and overall stability, 2 points that had been critical until that moment. Although the conditions of the filming day do not allow us to draw absolute conclusions, the sensations are clear enough to generate a change of perception within the team. This is not empty optimism, but a concrete sign that the path taken may be the right one. This is the true starting point of what we will see in Miami. It is not just another race on the calendar. It is the moment where Ferrari puts into play all its work, all its ability to react, and above all the hope of redirecting a season that had started uphill. Because if this package works, they will not only be closing the gap with Mercedes, they will be completely redefining their position in the championship. But if he fails, the blow will not only be sporting, it will also be psychological, especially for a driver like Hamilton, who arrived with the ambition of making history dressed in red. With everything Ferrari has built in the shadows, the focus now shifts completely to Miami, but not from a superficial expectation of one more improvement, but from internal tension of knowing that this package has to work from the first moment. Here there is no longer room for interpretations, nor for technical excuses, nor for long adaptation processes. What Ferrari brings to Miami is, in essence, a direct response to each of the weaknesses they exposed in the first races, and that turns this weekend into a kind of definitive test where every detail will be analyzed to the limit, both by the team and its rivals. The most critical point of all this development continues to be the power unit and its integration with the hybrid system, because in the 2026 regulations, it is not enough to have power, you need to manage it intelligently in each phase of the lap. Ferrari has worked specifically in that area after Hamilton's complaints, seeking not only to reduce the difference in horsepower compared to Mercedes, but also to improve energy delivery, something that directly impacts traction, acceleration, and the ability to attack or defend in key areas of the circuit. This is not a minor change. It is a transformation that can completely alter the way the car behaves in the race. And if they have really managed to optimize this aspect, the SF26 could go from being a limited car to a much more complete and competitive one. But there is another equally important element that often goes unnoticed: pilot confidence. Because during the first races, Hamilton was not only dealing with a technical deficit, he was driving a car that did not convey confidence, that did not respond consistently, and that forced him to constantly adapt instead of attacking. And that, for a driver of his level, is a huge limitation. What Ferrari is looking for with this package is not just to improve numbers, it is to give Hamilton back the feeling of control, that connection with the car that allows him to make the difference in key moments. And precisely that was what began to change at Monza, where for the first time he felt that the car reacted in a more predictable way and in line with his driving style. From there, everything becomes much more strategic. Because if Ferrari has managed to stabilize the car and improve energy efficiency, then the impact is not limited to a fast lap, it extends to the entire race management. This means being able to maintain more constant rhythms, reducing tire, whereby not having to compensate for deficiencies, and above all, opening the door to more aggressive strategies. In a championship where the differences are minimal, these types of improvements can be directly translated into positions on the track, and therefore, into key points to change the dynamics of the championship. However, this is where the great external pressure appears. Mercedes is not going to wait, and Ferrari knows it. The reference is still ahead, and although this package can close part of the gap, the unknown is how much. Because it is one thing to improve, and quite another to reach the level necessary to fight directly for victories. And at that point, every thousandth counts. If Ferrari is left halfway, the psychological impact could be devastating, especially after having concentrated so many resources on this update. In addition, there is a factor that adds even more tension: time. We are early in the season, but not early enough to allow for prolonged errors. Every race counts, every point lost weighs, and Ferrari has already given up important ground. That is why Miami is not only an opportunity, it is an obligation. They need immediate results to validate the path they have taken, to justify the technical commitment, and above all, to keep the internal trust of the project alive. And in the midst of all this, Hamilton is once again the central axis. Because if the car responds as expected, it will be up to him to convert that potential into real results. Your ability to adapt quickly, to interpret the car's behavior, and to squeeze out every improvement will be key. We are not talking about just any driver. We are talking about someone who has built his career on the basis of taking advantage of every technical opportunity he has had. And if Ferrari has finally given him a competitive tool, the impact can be immediate. But this act does not close with certainty. It closes with a growing tension. Because Ferrari has done everything in its power. It has identified the problems, it has developed an aggressive solution, it has tested it secretly, and it has received positive signals. Now there's only one thing left: check if all that translates into real performance when it really matters. And then Miami arrives, the moment where everything stops being theory, simulation, or test sensations and becomes pure reality on the track. Ferrari lands at the Grand Prix with a pressure that does not allow half measures, because this package was not designed to improve slightly. It was created to change the course of the season. From the first moment in the paddock, you can sense that something is different, not only because of the visible modifications on the SF26, but because of the team's internal attitude, a mix of tension and expectation that perfectly reflects what is at stake. Ferrari has reached exactly the point where it can no longer hide behind promises or long-term processes. Miami 2026 marks the moment where everything is defined, where the accumulated work, technical decisions, and internal pressure converge into a single reality: pure performance on the track. What began as a season full of doubts, with Lewis Hamilton frustrated by the limitations of the SF26 and pointing out clear problems in the power unit and the general behavior of the car, has evolved into a completely different scenario. One where for the first time there is a real basis on which to build something competitive. This package not only represents a technical improvement, it represents a change of mentality within Ferrari. Is proof that the team has understood the magnitude of its problems and has been able to react aggressively, taking risks and betting everything on a single card. And the most important thing of all is that this bet has generated a clear response from its star driver. Because when Hamilton feels that the car responds, when he regains that connection that allows him to push to the limit, Ferrari stops being a project under construction and becomes a real threat. And that is the real key to everything. Are we seeing the birth of a Ferrari capable of returning Hamilton to the fight for the title? Or just the first step on a path that still has too many unknowns to resolve? Subscribe to continue uploading more of that content. Now you really think about all this.